I just pushed the button to go live. So here we are. We are now live on YouTube and Twitter, I think. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this very special interview with Sam Englebardt. This is the first time we are having a one-to-one interview, and we'll try to go and keep on going, interviewing more and more people from the industry. I'm really excited to start with you, Sam. Today we'll learn a little bit more about your background, what you've done, what are your views about blockchain gaming, NFTs, the Metaverse, and other very, very interesting topics that the BGA is really actively promoting. Before we jump into question, I'll start by a quick presentation of the BGA. So I have a couple of slides that I always show for those of you who are not familiar with the BGA. What are we doing? So we are a non-profit organization which is committed to promoting blockchain as a technology within the game industry. Our goal is to spread the awareness about blockchain, decentralized gaming, non-fungible tokens, true ownership as a way to highlight a potential for creating new ways for creating games, publishing games, monetizing games, engaging with your audience, your community, and leveraging this technology toward gaming. We're also strong advocates for diversity and more inclusivity of women in the industry. We've run a series of events. Yesterday was our second event involving only 100% women speakers, and we'll have already 3 more scheduled for this month and next month. So really excited to get to the stage, give them a virtual space where they can talk, present what they are doing, and actively advocating toward more inclusivity. And beside that, the core activity from the Blockchain Game Alliance include networking opportunities for our members, allowing them to reach to their users, to create networking opportunities for either business with other partners or promoting their products, services, and games. Research and reporting involving working groups. We had working groups about DAO, about decentralized gaming, and we'll soon have as well about the DeFi and gaming, the potential behind. We are here also to represent blockchain game company, giving visibility to all our members, communicating, etc., and advocating for the use of blockchain within the industry, bridging between traditional gaming companies and blockchain gaming companies. We are growing, and we're growing fast. So we have now over 150 members who've joined, not games only, but also protocol, service, middleware, investors as well, media, etc. The family of all the members of the Blockchain Game Alliance is really growing nice, and we are agnostic on technology. So we are not limited to one blockchain or another. We are really welcoming everyone who is interested in the space to move forward together. And we've been running a lot of different events, the monthly meetup of all our members online, free. We are offering free speaking opportunities to our members at various events across the world. We are writing articles, we are creating workshops, legal workshop, DAO workshop, etc. on different topics, as well as this now series of events dedicated to 100% women speakers. And today, without further ado, we'll start our conversation with Sam. So Sam, are you with us?
I'm here. Very happy to be here.
Yes. Hello. Where are you, Sam?
I am now in Aspen, Colorado, actually. I spent most of the COVID lockdown in my apartment in New York, but was lucky enough to get out here a couple days ago and was invited by a good friend to stay at his house here. And I'm going to be here for at least the next, several weeks. We'll see.
Excellent. So I believe we have at BGA members from around the world. We have members in US, in Europe, in Asia, Korea. So for some of them it's late night, for some of them it's early morning. So yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. Let's start. Sam, can you tell us a little bit more about your background, who you are, or what's your current role?
Sure. Yeah. I'm currently, first of all, Sam Englebardt. My background is entirely in media and entertainment and technology investing and building companies in that space. I I'm a lawyer by training, although I say I'm a recovering lawyer. Technically, I'm licensed in California, but I moved out to LA after law school and started initially and really spent the first half of my career in the traditional media business in one way or another, and kind of in every way that you could be involved with what I call old media. So that was everything from television stations and movie theaters and film and television production, financing businesses. We had a group of record labels that we rolled up. My former and longtime partner and I were involved with that company. I mean, I really did spend 10 or 15 years involved in media, and along the way got very involved in initially digital media and technology. I think if you were doing anything in content and old media from 2000 to 2010, it was impossible not to start paying attention to digital content and the early days of streaming content. And I made my first investment in a game studio in 2009. And so it was just, for me, my career was this progression from more analog things and media in the old way to exposure to future tech, and sort of gaming led me into VR and AR. And along the way, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Bitcoin initially, and then blockchain technology. And so I moved from New York to LA from LA to New York in 2017. And initially to join and work with Mike Novogratz in his family office. And then shortly after that, he and I and a few other partners started a blockchain technology focused merchant bank called Galaxy Digital. Now what I do is run a division of Galaxy Digital called Galaxy Interactive. And that's the unit of Galaxy Digital that focuses on venture investments in interactive content and technology companies. So we are focused entirely on that space. We're investing from a fund called the Galaxy EOS VC Fund, which is a partnership between Galaxy Digital and a software development company called Block.one that many of you probably know. And we've had a mandate since we launched that fund to help build out the EOS ecosystem broadly. And then we've narrowed it down over the last year and a half to really focusing on interactive content and tech as the most strategic way to develop the EOSIO ecosystem.
All right, so we'll get a little bit further into the EOSIO ecosystem and what Galaxy Interactive strategy is, your particular interest, how you value companies, etc. Maybe you mentioned you started with blockchain as you entered Galaxy Digital. Which year was it? And was it really the first time you interacted with blockchain, or personally, like you had some story to share before?
Yeah, it's a fun story. It's such an interesting one to tell now, especially as I've seen this ecosystem, the world of blockchain develop as it has. I feel incredibly fortunate. I was living in LA, like I said, and I was investing in media companies. And along the way, I got to know and become close friends with several of the real pioneers in Bitcoin initially and ultimately in blockchain tech, I think generally. And these are guys like Brock Pierce, who was the first person to ever say the word Bitcoin to me. I wish I had bought Bitcoin when he first told me about it, because that was probably 2010. But and William Quigley, who went on to found Wax and has been instrumental in building out, I think, the blockchain gaming ecosystem, and just a bunch of other people that LA still has, and it certainly had then, this incredible community of technology pioneers, and particularly blockchain technology pioneers. I was investing in and around the space. I was curious. I was friends with these people. So for me, it was very much a couple of years of hearing about Bitcoin, I remember they were launching Tether and hearing about what Tether was going to do and decentralized vision that all these people had. And so I guess I finally bought some Bitcoin in 2013. Was the first time I bought Bitcoin. And it was a funny story because I bought some, and it was back when it was incredibly hard to buy Bitcoin. And, and I've got my keys on paper and I'm trying to figure out what to do with them. And I have, a guy that was working with me at the time trying to help me figure this out. And I bought it in, I guess it was right before Thanksgiving in 2013. And I bought it at around $300 a Bitcoin. And like in 2 weeks, it ran up to 1,000 or something like that. And I didn't know what was going on. I hadn't done the work yet to really understand the technology. So I remember I quickly sold it and said, this is too crazy. I don't understand what this is. And then it crashed And I said, oh, wait a minute, I'll buy some more and see it. And then it went up again. And then I sold it. And it was kind of like, that was a little bit of my intro. And then I remember Brock came to me when they were, the Ethereum, initial Ethereum crowd sale was being put together. And I didn't buy any then. And at that point, I actually didn't have anything. And then I waited, and around September of 2016, I bought some ETH at that point. And so then I had Bitcoin and I had Ethereum, and I said, this is now becoming interesting enough, and I'm spending enough of my time, and I've now invested enough of my money into what's going on here. Maybe I should really dig in deeper. And then that started over the next 6 months. Brock and William and a group of us from LA, Johnny Steindorf, who went on to found Distributed Global. And we had this little group of people that would get together once, at least, if not 2 or 3 times a week, and just brainstorm and kick ideas around. And that was an amazing period for me. I was in LA. I was doing a lot of work then with a few portfolio companies that were not blockchain companies, a VR company called The Void, and a few others. But mainly I was just kind of looking at this growing blockchain world, and I found myself just endlessly fascinated by it, and really I just was spending all my time thinking about it. So I was talking a lot with Mike Novogratz then, and my girlfriend lives in New York still, we live together in New York now. And it was, I would come to New York periodically and talk with her, and Mike would, get together with me and tell me Megan's going to dump me if I don't move to New York. I got to come to New York and work with him. And that's what we did. We just found this idea of, great, I'll come and I'll work with you. He had a bunch of different positions, both in coins and also private equity investments and so on in blockchain. And he was also interested in the things that I was doing in other areas of my venture life. So we really bonded around that. And then one thing led to another.
Interesting. There's always a woman involved in any entrepreneur story somehow.
To get me to move to New York and LA, it would have to be a woman. But I'm happy to be there.
So you have quite a rich and diverse background into multiple themes, and the same you've experienced through Bitcoin, the beginning of ETH, the beginning of EOS, obviously. Have you been involved with NFTs as well, either like via crypto art or via games?
Yeah, and we've been investors in different aspects of that for sure. I've never bought myself. I've never bought an art NFT. I remember Mike went to at one of the Ethereum conferences and came back as one of the bidders on an expensive crypto kitty and things. But we have a few art related companies, one in particular called VerisArt in the portfolio, actually. And it's an area that I am fascinated by. And in fact, I'm staying now at my friend Scott Lynn's house in Aspen, and he founded a company called Masterworks, which is not a blockchain company today, but a couple of years ago, one of his original visions was really, what he's doing is pioneering art as an institutional asset class. And his vision then, and I think it still remains something we talk a lot about as a future possibility for Masterworks, is some form of art as a digital collectible. And that's something that I think has tremendous potential.
It does indeed. We'll jump a little bit forward after. Maybe one last question about yourself. So what was your first investment related to blockchain?
Oh, wow. Well, if we don't include just buying some Bitcoin and buying Ethereum, in 2017, I was participating in some of the early ICOs. And again, just fascinated by the world, and Brock and Scott Walker and other people that were in LA and William Quigley and so on sort of introduced me to that. And then even when I first hooked up with Mike, we were very active in the ICO market. But the first and by far the most important investment that I made in blockchain was I was very fortunate to be invited into the first equity round that Block.one raised in May of 2017. So they raised a small equity round, seed equity round. And again, thanks to my friendship with Brock. And also by that point, he had introduced me to Brendan and Dan, who co-founded Block.one. And so I was able to get a nice allocation in that round. And that was such an interesting investment because I met Brendan and Dan, and I really just believed instantly in their vision for blockchain tech. And they were the first people that really took me through some of these alternatives and educated me on the trade-offs with different protocols, and really on how they saw the world and why a protocol that maybe focuses less on maximum decentralization and makes the in exchange to think about speed, efficiencies, and cost savings, and all the things that they were driving with their EOS vision. Just made a ton of sense to me. So that was an incredible investment, first of all, and it was also the start of this very, very important partnership in my life, where we now manage a fund in partnership with Block.one and so on. So that was definitely the arguably the first, or amongst the first investments I made, and the most important by far.
Thank you for sharing those stories with us. So let's dig a little bit more into Galaxy Digital and Galaxy Interactive, if you like.
Sure.
So, but you're here with us today, interviewed by the Blockchain Game Alliance. Can you tell us more? What are your intentions? What is, maybe if you have a specific message for the industry, or something like you're looking for more specifically in this industry?
Sure. Well, I mean, as I've said, we've really made the strategic commitment and decision to focus on interactive and on gaming largely as a core part of our whole interactive thesis. I mean, I guess what I would say is, over the last couple of years, as we've been very much heads down and executing on this Galaxy Interactive strategy we put together, I'm feeling now like it's a really important time, actually, and why I was so happy to be invited to talk with you on this show. It really is a time to re-engage with the community again and ignite that dialogue around why blockchain tech really is so core to everything that we're doing in the interactive space. I think things have obviously quieted down a lot over the last couple of years from the point of peak hype in that bull market. And if all of us that are involved in really building in the blockchain community are honest, I think we have to say that adoption has been slow, and probably slower than most people would have wanted, maybe faster than some people even thought it would be. But in general, I think the promise of blockchain technology, whether or not that's been fully realized today for gaming and interactive worlds, remains the same from my point of view. I mean, I feel virtually certain that the technology is going to play a critical role in this space. And I do believe that we're approaching now that point where the first wave of really high quality applications that leverage blockchain in any way are actually going to be released. Like, we still really haven't seen that yet in our space particularly. So I think it's going to be incredibly exciting to see what happens. But we also have to remember through all of this that we are in the very early days of this. So that's really where I'm coming from right now.
I absolutely agree. Like, most of the project we are seeing now as part of the BGA and that coming to market, they really started right after this point of time where Crypto Kitties, CryptoPunk were born, and high quality games just take time to produce. You need to have the team, the production efforts, etc. So it's just so logical that they are finally coming to market by end of 2019, in 2020. Some of them have just released their teaser. I believe you've made some really interesting announcements over the last few days of some amazing project with like veteran people in the industry, AAA studios that are using this technology and showcasing that like we can create really gorgeous, amazing, futuristic game and realize the vision behind through the technology. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about some of those recent investments you've done. So while doing my research over the past 3-4 months, you've announced, I believe, Genvid. You've announced Dazzle Rock, which is a studio in Finland. You just announced with an investment in Englebardt from SoCouch Studios, and just yesterday was it one with Playable Worlds by which is led by Ralph Koster. So yes, what connects those companies? What decided you to invest?
Well, I guess high level, we really think about investing in 3 broad categories within the interactive space. So we think about content studios, we think about interactive social applications and marketplaces, and we think about infrastructure technology that's going to power this whole ecosystem. So, again, I think that's sort of, if you have that framework in mind, you can understand the portfolio and the individual investments that you may see announced. All of these, we believe blockchain technology is going to be hugely disruptive to the entire interactive space. So everything that we're investing in and thinking about, you can assume that we have some vision and conviction around why blockchain technology is important. That's sort of an overarching, part of our driving investment thesis. I guess in terms of the recent announcements, the most recent announcement was in Raf's company, Playable Worlds. We announced that one yesterday. We did announce Dazzle Rocks, a month or so ago. You probably saw some news in the last couple of days, actually, about Mythical Games, which released through the IGN Summer of Gaming event. They released their trailer for Blankos, which is their first game. And that's really, to me, it's interesting to talk about Mythical, even though it's one of our first investments. It's coming full circle because it's really one of our first companies that is now reaching that point where they are about to release into the marketplace. What I really feel is the first AAA quality game developed by established and really proven, AAA game developers and entrepreneurs, with this idea of true ownership and blockchain technology as a core component of the experience. So, that one, if I was going to talk about any on this call, in some ways is really the most important of our portfolio companies today, because I think it's it's leading the charge, and I think we're going to see over the next several months what this product offering means and the extent to which people really respond to it.
Excellent. And more specifically to Playable Worlds, I was reading in the interview, so I will quote you, and then you can maybe try to let us know exactly what's coming through, because I think it's really exciting. So you've been focused on enabling the next wave of interactive entertainment by making investments in cloud-native content and infrastructure, such as blockchain, that we believe will ultimately lay the foundation for the Metaverse. Metaverse. We'll talk about it right after also.
Sure, I would love it.
There are few that know the MMO space like Raf, and we're thrilled to be backing him and his exceptional team. So for me, I think I'm getting curious here. Like, what is this next wave? Like, what does those words like cloud native content and infrastructure such as blockchain? Like, I suppose it's not only the blockchain for its utility, but just something more behind. So.
Yeah, I mean, and this will probably drag us into the metaverse conversation, which has been, it seems like everybody wants to talk about these days. And that's such a critically important part of our investment thesis at Galaxy Interactive, and also just my personal belief about where the world's heading. I guess with respect to Raf and Playable Worlds, the best way to articulate what I meant by that quote is really, first of all, Raf is undeniably one of the few experts in the world on MMOs. So for us, the first thing was, okay, let's find somebody that we know. If we're gonna dip into the MMO space, let's really find somebody that we know has a track record in it and knows as much or more about MMOs and what people want to do in them than anybody. But the tech piece of this is like Raf's ambition to build a massively scalable, persistent, living virtual world. That's what we're after here. And so it's cloud that's going to make parts of that possible. It's blockchain that are going to make parts of that possible. And really what we're trying to do is imagine, as people increasingly spend more and more of their time immersed in the digital devices that have become so integral to their lives, as they move from spending the majority of their waking hours in the analog world and the physical world, and they begin to spend more and more of it, and increasingly a majority of the time they're awake, they're now spending in these digital worlds. I'm interested in, and my partners at Galaxy Interactive, what we spend our time thinking about is, okay, what technology is going to make it possible for these worlds to be things that people really will invest, and invest, I mean time, I mean the money, I mean the identity and social status and everything. What needs to be in these worlds, and what do these worlds need to consist of and provide to their inhabitants to expect people to stay and really to contain people and get them to engage at the level that we want them to engage. So that's where cloud, which is especially useful around things like enabling engagement and allowing and creating that world that allows it to be persistent and allows them to really be updating content in a way that would otherwise be very difficult to do if everything was happening, at the client side. Blockchain, which I think is going to prove to be so incredibly important in enabling. There's a lot of things that I think blockchain is going to do with respect to these virtual worlds, but in the context of this conversation, enabling people to really own and monetize in unique ways the creations, the digital creations that they make inside the virtual worlds. As they invest more and more time, I think blockchain technology, they're investing this time in their identity. They're investing this time in the things that define them and their social status. And they're going to want to own those things, and they're going to want to be able to do things that they currently can't do with digital goods as they're currently conceived. And they're also, I think it's, I don't even know that I can say definitively how they'll use all these objects, but I think that once you invest a certain amount, or if we expect people to invest that enormous amount in time and energy and money, they're going to want to know that these worlds can't be turned off, that these things can't be taken from them, and so on.
Really interesting. And so, do you think like the success in those virtual worlds that will be operating and running through the blockchain, will it only come from AAA teams with a track record like you mentioned, or do you think there's also a possibility for like a newer generation of developer, game developer, creator that are crypto native, that are only built game from starting CryptoKitties in 2017, but still get some of the primitive behind the true ownership, the play to earn, and other topics, and they are maybe best suited, or like maybe it will come from both. It's do you have a specific view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's entirely possible for great games and great products to be made from first-time entrepreneurs or people who don't have prior experience building around a particular space. So for sure, I think we're going to see some incredible games. I also think we're going to see, we're investors in a company called Immutable, and that's a founding team that had a tremendous amount of blockchain knowledge. They didn't have a great deal of experience building games prior, but they're doing some really, really interesting stuff. And I think we will continue to see that, and great visionary people are going to emerge. And technology, especially the technology we're talking about, is making it easier than ever for somebody who doesn't have a clear prior track record to create things and to create something that people really, really respond to. That being said, my primary strategy and conviction with respect to games in particular has always been that it's just really, really hard to build a great game and ship a game and market a game and operate a game on an ongoing basis, because all of these games today have become platforms that need to be operated and run. So for the most part, we skew towards founders. If what we're looking at is a game studio or an investment in that space, we skew towards people who really have a proven track record as game developers, because whatever else we think they're going to do, or they have ambitions to do technologically, the more that I can at least check the box on knowing that these people really understand gaming and know how to make a game, the better. Because, like I said, first timers will emerge and it'll happen, but it's much, much, much less likely to happen. I do think, I'll just add one more point though, where I think unexpected consequences will emerge, and we'll see first times and things that we haven't seen before. This is one of the incredible benefits of when blockchain technology is implemented well, and it opens up and creates incentives for people to build and iterate on what's been created before them. And we're seeing this a lot with Immutable, for example, in their game Gods Unchained. That's where it gets really exciting, because when you build these worlds and you create some degree of openness around them and you incentivize people somehow to participate and get creative and explore, you start to see all kinds of like related products and features and their own marketplaces for cards in Gods Unchained, or other things that people are incentivized to get in there and build and do things that the original studio that made the game would never have thought to do, or just would never have prioritized doing. And so that's one of these other areas where this when you align, the developers and the players and and the content owners and IP owners, if that's in place, when you start to align these people in this way that I think blockchain makes possible, then you really just get the added benefit of this incredible creative fountain that comes out of it. And that's maybe what I'm most excited about when I think about where the blockchain sort of implementation in games is going to come. I know all the obvious ways that these studios are going to try to do it, and it'll be fascinating, but it's all the unexpected stuff that I think will bubble up as a result that we should all be really, really excited to see happen.
So we are seeing you're participating through your investment into some of like the most showcasing product that the industry can have. Like Gods Unchained is an amazing TCG game that I think can really be on par with Hearthstone. Blancos is a fantastic multiplayer UGC game. If you haven't seen the trailer that they just released with this summer of game, I really invite you to go look for it, and I'm sure you'll get very excited by the idea of entering this multiplayer world and be looking forward to the launch. So, and blockchain behind those games holds a lot of promise already, right? The fact that the users can be incentivized to participate, they become stakeholders in those games. They can not only participate to content creation, but they can share potentially the upside of being among the first players to join, monetize the asset, resell them on marketplace, create various things that the user didn't even think about, like DAOs, etc. But so we have a lot of like key ingredients that looks very promising. We have like leading game studios with track record behind that are producing games that really are attractive. So what is missing? Like, what is the missing driving force for more players to enter? Is it just a matter of time and that those games come out of beta and finally launch like traditional games, or just something else here that you think is still missing, but with your view on the industry will soon be fixed or completed?
Well, I mean, for sure, I think the fundamental, most important next step is to have some applications that people want to play, independent of whether they integrate blockchain technology or not. So that's when you highlight that we're really trying to invest in studios and in applications that we think are going to bring great product into the world. That's our fundamental, most important underlying thesis. I really do believe that for the great majority of people that today are not blockchain or crypto enthusiasts, the first step is like if you're a game studio, make a great game. Make a game that millions of people are going to play and introduce them to what's possible with blockchain technology that way. It can't go the other way. If what you're doing is just trying to build and cater to the small number of people that are really focused on blockchain and care about blockchain today, then you're really missing who your core audience is. And from my perspective, you're missing the ingredient that will determine whether anybody really ultimately cares about what you've built. So application layer in every case prior, I really believe has been the most important thing to help a new technology adopt. And I think there's no difference in this case. I think in that way, it's a matter of time. And as great product comes out, we'll see adoption. I do think what we spend a lot of time, with respect to how the blockchain ecosystem is really going to evolve. There are still a lot of risks and issues that are associated with building blockchain-based games today. So, we have all of these things that are not solved yet. We're all of us that are really focused on this space, whether it's the gaming space or blockchain more broadly. I'm talking about scalability. I'm talking about security, KYC, AML, when we start talking about objects and opening up marketplaces and economies, reputational risk, these types of things. This is all stuff that is still, as we're sorting out and building the first applications that we think enough people are going to care about to really play, we're also simultaneously, those of us in this space, are thinking about these other factors and having to navigate that. And that's why I say we're still so early in this. The resolutions are emerging. I think we're starting to see how this stuff is going to play out. There's still a lot of areas where we will find out what's possible, to some extent based on where the law evolves, and because there's a lot of gray area still. So, I think the move is focus on great applications, focus on things that people, want to use and are going to get excited about, introduce them to blockchain technology that way and in a way that they can handle, and ideally in a way that is where the blockchain of it is as invisible as possible. And it's much more about what do you want to do and what does blockchain technology allow you to do. And if people are doing something that they want to do, they're not going to care that they're doing it because of blockchain necessarily, but they're going to be doing it. And they're going to start to understand that way why it's special and why this is interesting. And then, blockchain, we know, those of us listening here know that blockchain technology incentivizes people and creates the opportunity for people to really act and be rewarded for their actions better than anything we've ever seen. So if we do this right, we will see that virality. We will see these communities evolve and emerge and grow. And we've seen little bits of it before. As crazy as the hype a few years ago was, the important thing from that was it was like this incredible indicator of what these platforms are capable of doing in terms of motivating people to action. And that's going to be a really, really important thing over the coming few years.
So in some way, we can say like developers are also have to compromise somehow to like what are the legal restriction, jurisdiction, the fact that you need to run KYC, AML potentially at some point when you're introducing those economies, or the way to onboard the users before they actually get to the point where they use the technology, like not even telling them that the technology is there, to achieve the vision, the ambition, until there will be a point of time where like it would be so common for everyone, like the most of the user will already be familiar, and there will be no more thing to I would say hide, but not really hide, right? Is that what you recommend? Like just think through the user experience first, do not mention blockchain, but just get the user through the experience until that moment of time where they actually want to interact with it? Or
I mean, I don't know that I would say you can't mention blockchain or keep blockchain in the background or whatever, although, it's always something you're monitoring. And this is true really of implementation of any technology as a startup or as a new company that's adopting new technology. You're weighing like the cost benefit of leading with something that's about technology. And that's, Mike Novogratz, he has this concept that I love where he talks about sort of back of the TV versus front of the TV stuff. And that's a helpful way to think about it, because like sometimes if you're trying to launch a game and you want people to understand the game you're building and you want people to get excited about playing it, do you want to talk about the back of the TV stuff? Or do you want to just emphasize that, hey, when here's what's on the front of the TV, watch it, you're going to love it. And by the way, when you're here, do this and do that and do that. And like most people don't want to know about what, and this is happening with this smart contract and this protocol. Like you're going to lose a lot of people if you go that route. So I think that's a piece of it. I think with blockchain, the legal issues around it, in particular over the last couple of years, I think have made it prudent for a lot of companies that know what they're building and want to build to be a little quieter with respect to what they're doing on the blockchain piece. I think there's a feeling amongst a lot of people that, hey, we're building this. We're gonna let the work do the talking. But what benefit do I have when I'm 2 years away from my game launching to stir up all of this, noise around the technology that I'm using to create the game that I'm going to play? I'm going to tease people with the game and what that's going to be and know that people are going to want to play it. And I'm going to leave the technology a little bit, in the background. I think we all should be saying, and people need to hear, and, Mythical again is a good example just because they happen to be one of the ones launching first, but obviously Immutable with Gods Unchained also leads with the fact that, hey, come check this out. You're going to be able to engage with and own the items that you buy or earn in this game. You're gonna be able to do things with them that's different than what you're used to. Come check it out, see what it is, do it. They're all talking about that, and Mythical talks about play to earn and so on. So we can talk about it, and we should talk about it, and we should absolutely be pioneers at this incredibly important moment in time for blockchain technology. Again, I view myself very much in that role for blockchain generally, for EOSIO, and so on. But primarily, going back to our point about how are people going to get exposure to this tech, first and foremost, build them something that they want to use and tell them about that thing. And the thing that they want to use when you're building a game is not blockchain. The thing they want to use is the game. And then the blockchain is going to make it interesting for them to play it in new ways.
I think it's really related also by, we're still in the really early stage of that technology. And if I may compare with like how 3D graphic used to look like 15 years, 20 years ago, there was this point of time where like the first 3D graphic acceleration cards come to market. Like I think it was like the 3D FX1 and 2. And at that time, people used to like, oh, this game is optimized for 3D FX and a lot of technical jargon. What is this thing? Oh, it looks beautiful, so I can finally I get it. But now, like no one starts to think, oh, this game is running on amazing shaders and all those graphic effects, real-time shadows, post-processing, pre-processing. We just like, it looks great, I want to play it. So I think like we should lead the same way. Past maybe the wave about like, oh, this can be transferred to gas fees or things like gas fees, or like how scalable, how many transactions can be done, etc., and just figure out like what's the benefit for the user. Okay, you can monetize your assets and we'll guide you through it if you like. It will be easy at some point, or it's already largely improved since 2017. And just trust us, the game is fun, play it, right?
Totally. Well, I mean, I think that's a great example. I think another one even that, that I find myself thinking a lot about just because I lived through this in the early part of my career, but it's like digital music and downloaded songs and file transferring of songs and so on. And if you think back to not that long ago, the user experience to download a song was horrible. I mean, it was absolutely crazy.
MP3 player.
It would take you had an MP3 player. You had different formats and standards. You had, it would take 10 minutes. It would take 20 minutes to download a song in some cases. And you're getting one song. And, and I remember being in the music industry, in some ways at that time, even as this was happening, or at least having investment exposure to it. The industry thought they were never going to let this happen. And the users, like we all started playing around with digital music. And at some level, despite it being a terrible experience, we all kind of knew the way we were going to consume music going forward. We didn't know when or how it was going to be a better experience to do it. And file sharing is a whole different thing that we could talk about. But I'm just talking about even something simple like the early days. Once we had figured out enough that, the early days of an iPod and Apple, Music. But you look at it now, and obviously the UX has been perfected. But it's also radically changed even the way songs are recorded, the way music is marketed. The length of songs has changed as a result of the technology, and you don't hear long songs anymore, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that. The idea of the album has been replaced with the idea of the single, which has been replaced by the idea of a little blip of music. So this is what we have to expect. We're in for here. And again, the industry. I think those of us who've had enough experience with blockchain and have started to engage with it and use it, we sort of feel like, okay, we know what's possible here, and we're really, now we just gotta be patient, but patiently driving towards that result. If you're people that have chosen to actively engage in building that ecosystem.
So there will be a point of time where the market becomes mature, the technology becomes mature, but not instantly or by itself. It's because a lot of people are working to improving all the different parts that once connected together makes it that overall it's no longer taking 10 minutes for you to put an MP3 on the music, or it's no longer taking 10 minutes for you to trade an NFT and monetize it, but it's all like just instant and seamless. So that's where, and when do you think, maybe it's a good transition, like when do you think that moment of like when it's mature enough and all the pieces that compose that ecosystem are going to get together? Are we talking like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, more?
I guess having now been investing in future technology or technology prior to its mass adoption point for quite a while, I guess I've learned like it always happens like more slowly. If you're the more immersed you are in it, the more likely you are to realize that it's going to happen more slowly than most people think. But then once it triggers, it's like, it's unlikely it's going to be 20 years, but it's unlikely it's going to be 1 year. It's one of these things where, and outsiders, the less you know, the more I think you're likely to be like, it's right around the corner. But the more you know, and the more you immersed you are in it, the more you understand all of the challenges and how much further we have to go. But again, there's not going to be the like, yesterday there was no blockchain gaming, and today it's everything. It's going to be a process, and you're going to wake up and you're going to start to see the early iterations of this in technology and in things and in applications that you like, and it's going to be clunky, and it's not going to necessarily appear to be doing anything all that spectacular. And then little by little, you're going to look back one day and be like, I don't remember a time when I couldn't do all of these things. I can't believe that's possible. I don't remember it. I hardly remember a time now. And I'm like at the end of that generation of, I'm right in the, what do they call us? The Xennials, the sort of edge of Generation X and millennials. And it's supposed to signify this group of people that like are old enough to remember their analog lives, but also be actively participating in and really remember the transition to their digital lives. And the implication is that everybody younger than me wasn't even alive when the analog thing was going on. So, I don't really remember much of, even though I was 20, I'm 40, I just turned 43 now. I was 21 or 22 when I got my first cell phone. And it's like, I can't actually, I remember not having one, but I can't really remember what it was like to not have one. I can't really remember what it was like to rely on a landline and an answering machine to talk to everybody. And I can barely remember what it's like to not have email on my phone and all of that sort of thing. So, it's like that. And that was 20 years ago. So we're on that mark.
This acceleration of technology. You probably remember those times where we were on like just 56K. Trying to dial on the internet and say, all right, memory time, like back in the memory lane.
Louis C.K. has that incredible bit. If you remember, if it's politically correct for me to say his name, I don't know, but boy, was he had this one thing that was so funny, about being on an airplane, and now it's like he shows up for his first flight where they've turned on Wi-Fi, and he sits down in the seat, and they come up to him and they tell him, we're pleased to announce and tell you that you've got this plane has Wi-Fi. And he's, oh my God, Wi-Fi, that's amazing, and he logs in and the plane takes off and he's got his Wi-Fi on, and 5 minutes into the flight, the Wi-Fi goes down. And like the first instinct is to feel like this thing you're entitled to is taken away. And it's like 5 minutes ago, you've never seen Wi-Fi on a plane in your life. And now you're complaining that it doesn't work anymore. And, we should expect that type of user adoption experience too, I think.
So is it your general approach now, like the way you're trying to model the future within this entertainment space is you take what you've lived through and you accelerate it to some point? Or do you have like another way to say like, all right, I take my special glasses and I know how the future will be like, and this is where we want to invest as a fund. So tell us more about like your strategy on deciding those things.
I would be very worried if I or anybody on my team started, to have strong conviction about knowing exactly what the future is going to be like. That's a very dangerous way to approach, I think, investing in the space. That being said, I think history matters. I certainly am a student of history and read history books and both generally and specifically about our space. And I think if you're going to invest in technology and media and games and whatever else today, you better educate yourself on what's happened before, because there is a tremendous amount of truth to this idea that if it doesn't repeat itself, it at least rhymes with where things have been before. And I think we can all learn a lot by understanding that. I think at some level though, if you're investing in things that don't exist yet, you do have to try to satisfy yourself that you've analyzed the world before you and what you think the world will be ahead of you as best you can. And then you need to just, swallow and take a plunge. And that's really what we do. We try to just guess as best we can with humility. I think it's important to emphasize that. And then we make a bet. But we're also betting to some extent, not just on the future as we think it's going to be, but we're betting on the future as we want it to be. And I mean, I'm talking about technology investing now, but it's interesting because this is such an important point to make with the world where we are at this moment in time. We're in a place where it's never been more important to be a student of history. And it's also never been more important to think about where the world is going and where you want the world to go and take steps to try to make that happen. And so that's what I think about in my life. That's what I'm lucky to have a team of people working with me that I love working with every day. And we're just trying to help craft a future that we're proud of and we're excited to see and get to experience.
And to that extent, 2020 has been quite like a very unique year in that sense. Like, have you noticed a specific acceleration through like what this COVID-19 pandemic has triggered, and more specifically in the entertainment space?
Again, I feel fortunate that our focus in business has been in gaming and interactive over the last few years, because I think of all the sectors that, and everybody's affected, by the way, in one way or another by COVID, and nobody's going to escape this, and I don't think we've really seen the full impact yet, economic impact of what's going on. I think we're just, we're slowly waking up to maybe what this is all going to mean. So I don't know how this will play out for our sector, but so far, we've seen an increased amount of use and dependence even on interactive content and technology and on the devices and so on that power it. So we have a portfolio of companies that have suffered less, I would think, than a lot of other businesses, and in some cases are actually thriving. I didn't know, especially with gaming, I really didn't know how well they would be able to pick up and just adopt a work from home, remote type of environment and really be able to function. And it seems like, at least in our case, in the companies that I have a real direct line into, they're doing just fine. And I think that, I hope that in some ways, I hope that we maintain some of the benefits of this type of lifestyle, where people do get to spend more time and, with their families and their friends, and also we save some of the, resources. We just waste an extraordinary amount of resources moving people all over the country all the time, all over the world all of the time, to get to the meetings they think they need to do in person and the things that they think they need to show up for in person and so on. So I'm hoping some of this actually leads people to say, okay, you know what, we can do this more remotely. We can connect with people digitally. And, obviously I'm a big believer that we're, as I said at the top of the hour, like, we're becoming a more digital species. Well, like, that's never been more true than over the last 3 months.
Yes. Sorry for interruption. I have my little 2-year-old daughter that's coming around. Hello.
Bye. Bye.
All right. So that's really interesting, and somehow, like, you're seeing more and more people trying to compensate that lack of physical contact through more connection into those online, digital, virtual worlds. And I think it's really interesting that as part of your portfolio, you've been making several investments into like online MMOs or virtual worlds games. So maybe can you tell us why? And we're going to jump now into this topic of the metaverse, like. Why the metaverse fits that vision that you have, like from 30,000 feet of where the future of gaming is heading? Like, do you see it's all going to become part of the metaverse somehow? And can you give us even your definition of the metaverse?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's, maybe we should start there with the definition part, because it's, it's funny. I think the most important thing to do when we talk about this metaverse, and it really is amazing to me. It's something that we've been thinking about and talking about for a long time, but it's in the last several months, it's like everybody's, converging on this idea and wants to talk about it and wants to understand what it is. And I think it's one of the least well-defined ideas that's being thrown around right now. And before we can really even have a conversation about how we're going to build the metaverse, we need to decide, like, do we even agree on what we're talking about? Like, let's start with the definition of this thing. I usually do that. And by the way, how long do we have, Seb? Because this is something I could spend hours talking about, but I'll try to
as long as you want. Like, we can run it for if you tell me you have to leave in 5 minutes, we'll accelerate it. But I think the conversation.
No, we talked for a bit. I have a little more time for sure.
Cool.
I generally start, and the people that I think are doing the most interesting work thinking about the metaverse kind of start from this very big idea that's probably been best articulated in recent years by Neil Stephenson, the author, in his work. And he talks about this metaverse as like a collective virtual shared space, right? That's I think that's sort of the definitionally the way we should think about it. And it's this convergence of he talks about like virtually enhanced physical reality and physical persistent virtual space coming together, so that you get in the end this place that is the sum of all virtual worlds, right? Of virtual worlds like games or whatever else, augmented reality, the internet, and the sites on the internet. So it's like, imagine this space that comes together, and it's when you in the physical world you have the digital objects inside the physical world. You have a digital world that somehow connects back to the physical world, and you really just have all this stuff together. It's an idea that you see in things like Ready Player One with the Oasis, or you see in the Matrix and ideas like that. My friend Matt Ball has done the best work, I would say, that in recent years, certainly, of taking that big, somewhat difficult idea and distilling it down into a handful of key characteristics. And he talks about the key characteristics of the metaverse being persistence, this idea of a living world, real scale, so like a big concurrent presence, so that you can have a lot of people in this world at the same time is important. For sure, there's got to be a fully functioning economy. That's critical. There's an idea of physical and digital continuity. And that's kind of tied back to what I was saying a minute ago, where you're going to need to be able to take your digital objects into the physical world, take objects out of the physical world, and somehow account for them in the digital world, and so on. So there needs to be fluidity. We're not going to spend all of our time in the digital version of the metaverse. It's really about how do we bring together the physical and the digital worlds. All of that really requires, I think, this notion of interoperability between identity and data and virtual goods. So that's a big part of his definition of the metaverse, and the one that I've adopted. And then there's a certain amount of UGC driven, very bottom up content creation, because this is an enormous world. If you're thinking about the metaverse in the way I'm thinking about it, in the way that we're thinking about it when we define it in these broad terms, then we're thinking about something that is far beyond the reach of any centralized top-down content creation entity to develop itself. So this is a world that needs to be made by out at the margins in a decentralized way, and by people very much populating it with content from the bottom up. So those are the characteristics of the metaverse that I talk about and that I mean when I say metaverse. So
it covers indeed this broader term. Like, it's not just a virtual world where people can truly own their asset from that only single world, but as you said, there needs to be a multiplayer component to it. Well, maybe at massive scale, there needs to be like this connection with the real world, the physical world, where maybe the same physical asset can have multiple representation into those worlds, or maybe it's yourself, which is like traveling around all those worlds, and you have your digital identity across all of them, which is a quite interesting topic we'll also maybe talk about if we have some time. And the UGC driven. So among Are you seeing like one project that already fits that definition, or for you, like the metaverse is more like a combination of many virtual worlds, many games, many social network that all together form something, but there will never be like just one single metaverse. It's always, it has to come in a plural manner, like with many.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the core questions, and I would say probably the hottest topic of debate amongst people that are thinking about this today. This idea of like, do you mean metaverse or do you mean multiverse? Is the way that I've heard it described. Are we talking about or do you mean a multiverse of multiverses or a metaverse of multiverses? all this stuff. I think for sure there will be silos of experiences. In the same way there are silos of physical experiences, and so, there'll be silos of digital experiences and silos of physical and digital that are somehow, when I talk about the metaverse, I'm talking about how are these somehow connected in a meaningful way. It doesn't mean that you have to be the same persona in every one of these silos. So I think it's critically important that in doing all of this, and we talk, again, this is a topic we could go so deep on, but when we talk about identity, there's this idea of, well, like if somehow all of these worlds are interconnected, are you going to take away from people the opportunity to have different identities, is the way they typically talk about it. And the first thing I do in that is to really try to define, are we talking about identity or are we talking about persona? Because I think of personas as being critically important to maintain. We need to make sure that people can wear different masks, appear to be different things to different people in different contexts. But at the same time, to actually do the metaverse in the way that I'm talking about it, ultimately, you are going to need the ability to connect all of these different types of virtual experiences and spaces back to one consolidated identity. The identity meaning literally, like when I say A is identical to B, I'm saying A has all of the same, A is identical to B if and only if it has all the same properties as B. And so it will look to some people like a multiverse because you're going to have different personas occupying different spaces and doing different things. But ultimately, I think it's going to have to come back to one consolidated identity that you can really like recognize as you, because ultimately how we think of ourselves, no matter how many different things we do or how many different people we engage with or different ways that we present ourselves to the world, we are still fundamentally, we think of ourselves, I think of myself as Sam, because at some level, no matter how scattered these different personas may be, and that's important to people, I pull it back ultimately and I'm able to recognize a chain of continuity through that back to this identity that I have in the world and in my mind as Sam. So we need to figure out about the metaverse, how do we create that? And if you believe that, it's actually ultimately one big consolidated, interoperable world that I'm talking about. And I probably made that way more complicated than it has to be, but you can see why, like, you pull this thread and we're going way down the rabbit hole.
Oh yes. We can keep talking for hours on that topic. And yeah. One way, like many people think of the metaverse, they're mentioning only the big players in the space. Like they say, okay, Google, Facebook are building virtual worlds now, or something that will be similar to it. Or we are seeing games, the games with the largest audience, like Fortnite, Minecraft, Battlefield, or even Call of Duty. I remember reading this interview from the NVIDIA CEO saying, like, we will be playing in those metaverse, and those are the virtual world we'll be actually living in, connecting both from physical and digital world. So do you think that rather than a blockchain-based, decentralized identity that still define and connect all your different persona, it will be more like still a centralized entity like Google, Facebook, or Fortnite that's going to control how and where or
Yeah. No, I don't believe that in the long run it can be centralized. In fact, I would say the single most important the single most important application for blockchain or thing that blockchain could make possible is this decentralized identity for what we're talking about. In fact, like if everything that I'm saying, if even a fraction of what I'm saying is true, And we believe people are going to invest the amount of time, energy, money, et cetera, into this digital identity that they're creating. I really believe fundamentally that it can't end up being owned and controlled and with the potential to be disconnected by a centralized actor. I think everything else flows from that. But if you really believe that these digital objects that you're earning or buying or whatever have value, and far more important than that, it's not the objects themselves that even really have the value. The objects are the things that we buy, or they're the result of the work that we do, or they're the friends that we have, or however we accumulate these digital objects. Or really, all we're doing is building our digital identity. We're building our status. We're telling the world always who we are. This is true of the physical things we own. This is true of the digital things that we own and that we're going to own. And so, the most important part of this is that we're saying now in this conversation that people are going to spend even more time than they already do and invest even more into the creation of this digital identity. And in my mind, there's no way that once the technology is at least there and available for people to know that the investment they're making cannot be taken away from them, there's just no way that they are not going to recognize how important that is. They may know already, but they live with it. And by the way, user behavior right now would indicate that not that many people care. And we see it with Facebook today, where we're just getting, now the narrative is just getting there, where people are starting to wake up and be like, well, maybe it does matter that they own all my information, but we're still not there. And if things are convenient enough,
a small fraction of people who actually care.
So that's the way it is. And part of that is just because nobody's really thought through with the alternative or seen what's possible when the alternative exists and is easy. And we're still ultimately creatures that want to move in the direction of least resistance. But as people wake up, and I think the macro trends in the world are going to force that issue more even faster than I would have thought. But as people really wake up to why this matters, if presented with an opportunity to do things differently, I think we're going to see an enormous response.
Absolutely. And before, I'm seeing some interesting comment that I will be putting, but essentially what you're saying is, like, as digital being, like we're a physical being, but we also have like this digital presence. We exist only there is a trace that we live in those websites, social media, social network, and now virtual world. So if we don't have this avatar persona, if we don't have those objects that we collect and can show, it's very hard to define our existence beyond the fact that we have an account into a centralized entity. So do you see that those digital objects, you say, like, maybe we don't attach so much value to them, or we only attach value to the extent that they are the proof of us being alive in that digital world. So there's a strong narrative, like there's this new business model, play to earn, like most people are naming it now, that is going to drive more adoption from user, and that actually open up strong economic opportunities for players. So moving from premium to free to play to earn, like redefining like this investment of time you put in games will turn into money. Do you think it is the underlying thing that's really connecting all the dots, or not necessarily?
Well, I think it's absolutely one of them. My partner Richard Kim and I spent a lot of time a year ago really starting to think about, like, what are the different ways that the world today is going to change into the world, as we think it will be tomorrow. And so definitely play to earn is a huge one. I mean, we sort of think of play to earn as the evolution enabled by technology, but the evolution from pay to win, and this whole model of pay to win that was driving the interactive space for such a long time, to this idea of play to earn. And that's definitely hugely important. But there's so many other things. We think about things like digital collectibles. right? That in the world today, you think about digital collectibles as something that, these are these things that can be modified and inflated, and and accounts can be seized, and the publisher, really has this incredible power and discretion to just do what it wants with the objects that you have, because they technically own them and the terms and conditions make that clear, and so on. So we see that, that's the world today, and we see that evolving into this idea of, censorship resistance and provable scarcity, and the immutability of those objects. We see the world today is, with respect to digital collectibles anyway, looks like objects that are trapped within, games and can't be sold without the publisher's consent. And, the world tomorrow we see as digital collectibles will be things that are portable and interoperable across games and across platforms. I could go on and on like this. There's a dozen of these different ways, or dozens probably of the ways that we could look at the world today and look at what we're doing and imagine where we're headed. And they're all fascinating. And again, I keep coming back to blockchain, and I'm preaching to the choir on this call, but it's for a lot of what we're talking about, it's the only technology I've seen in my experience that makes any of this stuff really possible. So yeah.
Absolutely. Beyond just collecting and owning those objects and potentially using them across many games, which I don't know if it's already something that's happening among some of your portfolio company, or it's maybe the next stage that will be coming after they launch. But the fact that we can enable economies and even people to build, to craft, to change, to alter those contents and use them in ways that were not necessarily designed by the developer or the original creator, giving them value and changing, really mimic what's happening with craft and the real world, and a lot of how content is produced and valued in the real world. So I think that's a necessary step for in general, for digital objects to come if they really want to build a long-lasting value and appreciation by more and more people.
Yeah.
So I'm really bullish myself, as you know, into those topics. And
I hope so, given the head of course. Atop the blockchain. You better be bullish.
Yes. Definitely. That's why I decided to join, represent, and not only from the Big Game Alliance, of course, but as you know, as co-founder and CEO of Sandbox.
Yeah.
So, do you have maybe 5 more minutes so we jump into conclusion?
Yeah, I think I just about 5 minutes. I'm looking at the clock and realizing I'm already late to the next one. I'm enjoying this so much, Seb. I really, again, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I don't know why we haven't had this conversation in a much longer form, but once we're done with COVID, I think we need to get ourselves a drink and really go deeper.
Absolutely. All right. So, I will see if there's any question in the channel. I don't see yet, but we have 5 more minutes. So please send your question with Sam. And in the meantime, I will draw with him on.
Is anybody actually, are there people actually listening to this?
No,
did we lose them?
It was just the 2 of us. So we could chat regularly. No, we have some people watching. We can display some comments from them, like hey Ryan. He say hey Sam. So
Ryan, hey Ryan. Oh, nice. I got a little shout out. I'm really excited. Ryan's been heads down building some stuff for a while that I'm going to get an opportunity to learn about next week. I think I've got a meeting with him. I'm really excited to see what he's been up to.
I guess with your position, you have the chance to see a lot of what's coming next, even ahead of us, in a couple of months, because essentially you get, at what stage usually does Galaxy Interactive invest? At seed round or?
I think the benefit of narrowing our focus as we have for now to really say our idea is we want to really own this interactive content and tech space and help to use that to usher in all this technology that we've been talking about. So I think if you do that with a large fund like ours, we're a $325 million fund, if you narrow the focus to one sector as we have, the only way to do that, and especially in a relatively nascent industry like we're in, we decided was to be stage agnostic with respect to our investments. So it's been really important to us that we build a team, and the team that I've put together have different. Everybody has to wear every hat, but I really think we have people that are experts at really, really early stage investments and experts at late stage and even debt and other things like that. Because we said, let's put a team together just knows how to invest broadly and at any time that we might enter the life cycle of a business. So we've written small pre-seed checks out of the fund, and we've written $20 million late stage growth checks out of the fund. We definitely skew more towards earlier stage and more sort of Series A in the $5 to $7 million type of range. But it's been really important that we have the ability to get in earlier and smaller, or later and bigger if we need to.
So you're still actively looking for the next opportunity, and is there something that maybe the member of the BGA can contact you, reach out about after this interview?
You mean, where do you reach out to me?
Yeah, maybe I can put if you're interested to receive a new investment opportunity and games that are within your investment thesis.
Email me, sam@galaxyinteractive.io. And then usually what I'll do, depending on what the opportunity is or what the need is, I'll filter that into the right person on our team to schedule a call, or these days it's a call. It used to be a call or a meeting. But
soon we'll be meeting in the virtual world. We will be demoing the things, the feature, etc. That's the next step, because we all say those Zoom call, Hangout call, it's still flat. It's two-dimensional. It's boring. So
check out. There's a lot of good ones. I have a portfolio company, High Fidelity, that's doing these amazing. Now they started as a basically Philip Rosedale, who founded Second Life, then went on and initially was really focused on building the VR version of Second Life on the blockchain, and then
they were one of the true pioneers.
What's that?
They were one of the true pioneers, actually.
Yeah. I mean, in virtual worlds, Philip belongs in a very short list of names anytime you talk about virtual worlds. And High Fidelity it's really incredible tech that he built. And in this COVID moment of time, and he's still very deeply involved in building a fully digital virtual world. But what they did was take the audio product that they built for the High Fidelity platform and actually spin up the ability now so that anybody can go and grab a server for themselves and host hundreds of people, soon it'll be thousands of people, inside of a shared virtual space. But it's audio only, and you're basically on you're interfacing with a 2D map on any device. This all exists, on the server side. So this is all away from your client, super, super light. You just URL any device, you're in a server, and you can bring hundreds of people into this shared space and have an experience with perfect audio fidelity. I mean, that's really been Philip's driving ambition, is to create these experiences where the audio is so good that you really feel that you're there. And it's all positional 3D audio. And if you're looking at your device, what you see is a 2D overhead view of a map, and you can move your little avatar around and spend time talking to one person in one place, or go listen to music with a group of people in another area of the map, and move around, so you can all stay in this shared world. So just imagine an MMO that scales to hundreds, or thousands of people, and you have these perfect audio conversations. So we do our team meeting in it every morning. My team gathers in there. Yeah, it's free.
You got me interested. I'm going to try it out.
Check it out.
And we're really seeing some pioneer things as well, people in those decentralized virtual world, like Crypto, Voxel, Decentraland. They already have running those virtual events in streaming with meetings. Yeah. They have the live video thing. And we didn't touch about it, but now we're seeing virtual concerts into Fortnite, into Minecraft. So there's a lot.
My friend Adam Arrigo. I'm not an investor in the wave, but my friend Adam Arrigo, they just announced that they raised $30 million. That's one of the ones that is probably one of the ones that got away from us. Actually, we were looking at it and just lost focus for a minute, and then they went out and raised a great round. And I'm really excited to see what they put together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, me as well. I'm really looking forward. Like every time, I think every day we are seeing something in the news about virtual world, about metaverse, and I think it's really good to see the momentum. I think it's good to see that it's becoming more and more mainstream, thanks to, of course, existing product, but new are finally coming to market or making huge announcements. So it's really, I think it's really 2020 is the year of the metaverse, and it's going to last.
It's the year of being 1 year.
The starting year of the decade and more of the metaverse, I would say. Just to not say it's the 1 year, and it's not a thing that's going away, right? But I mean, it's
bringing us 1 year closer.
Yes.
Well, Seth, I'm now at the end of my time for this, but I loved getting a chance to chat with you, and I hope we can do it again real soon.
Will do, and I wanted to give a big thank you as well for everyone who watched today. And maybe if it was too late, everything will be available on our YouTube through the link, so you can watch later this interview. Feel free to reach out to Sam or myself if you have any follow-up question, and we'll be happy to run additional interviews like this. So if you're interested to discuss one of the hot topics related to blockchain and gaming and have an idea for the Blockchain Game Alliance, don't hesitate. I think we can make it happen. Thank you, Sam. It's been really a great pleasure. We'll continue the conversation and hopefully meet offline and online in the virtual world soon. Have a good rest of the day and speak soon again.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Bye.